Which video game franchise should be revived? The Shadow of Mordor games. The second got hamstrung by shitty balancing to encourage microtransactions. Thankfully that's gone by this point, so you can enjoy the game freely without them. As a result, the launch was met with a pretty middling reception, which is a shame because outside of the scummy microtransactions it was better than the original in pretty much every way. We'll probably never get a third game thanks to the wet fart that was 2's reception. From 1994 to 2011, 17 years, Bethesda released 5 games on 4 different generations of hardware. From 2011 to 2021, 10 years, Bethesda have released 9 editions of one game across 6 platforms. If we assumed 6 won't be released until 2025 at the very earliest due to Starfield development, then it's going to get pretty close to being further away from Skyrim than Skyrim is from the launch of the first Elder Scrolls, and fucking DOS game that predates the PlayStation and N64. I'd like to think it's an outside chance, but it is absolutely possible. Even so, it shouldn't even be this close. I remember being 8 years old and one of my friends was allowed to drive an ATV all over his backyard. When I asked my mom for one, she asked me how old he was. He's 9. You can have one when you're 9 then. I never got my 4-wheeler. Not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade my friend brought a metal hip replacement piece from a human body. A human body that her father had cremated and kept. It was for what would you like to do when you grow up, sort of show and tell. She wanted to be a mortician like her dad. What's worse is that she allowed for this piece to be passed around the class before telling everyone, including the teacher, what it was. Chaos ensued afterwards. Don't mean to be weird, but because I know she's not here to tell you herself, thank you for fulfilling her wishes, and thank you for sharing this story. Maybe I'm batshit insane but I thought it was really wholesome, and it put a smile on my face and made me write his comment. When I was in prep, so about 5, I bought a skeleton my dad used for study. It was a real skeleton, back in the 60s/70s when he was studying medicine. You could just buy a skeleton. He used it to learn the bones of the human body. Thing is, my dad must have bought it, and because it was in a big box and I couldn't have done it myself. My brother made my mom bring me for show and tell after I was born. He then proceeded to tell the entire class that he helped her dig me up from a cabbage patch. The kids all believed him and the teacher was supposedly trying her hardest to not break out in hysterical laughter. Yes, I'm a 53 years old Cabbage Patch Kid. A lamb's tail. Apparently they went to a farm which let visitors keep them as souvenirs. Who knew that removing tails was a thing? Turns out it was a mistake to postpone show and tell for a couple of days while, hidden in a locker, the tail marinated in the July heat. I brought Rattlesnake to school in a mason jar that my father killed directly by our front door. I was 6, took to show my class. After the teacher let me show everyone and we discussed it, she stuck it in closet so we would all calm back down. Completely forgotten about, and we had a 3-day weekend. We had to have class in the gymnasium for 3 days. Wow. What a different look at snakes. Once the class next to me had a 2-inch snake crawl in, the class evacuated for the entire day. Another time, a snake was found on the football field so we had to postpone a game that week. We have taboos regarding snakes. This happened to my backpack after I brought some of my taxidermy collection for show and tell in kindergarten and I left all the little legs and hooves in my backpack for weeks. My dad's a big hunter and I was a weird kid who didn't know how weird my family was. Okay, the smell is very distinctive and impossible to wash out lol. In many places it's done to prevent sheep getting fly blown. Fly strike. Don't Google image search this if you are squeamish. In Australia, where flies are an order of magnitude more aggressive than their US counterparts, it's pretty much essential. I'm a preschool teacher in a state with legal weed. One of my students brought in a plastic tube the local dispensary uses for parole joints. He said he found it in his parents' room and he brought it because he liked the popping sound it made when he opened it. My brother found a scorpion at our house and captured it to bring for show and tell. The scorpion got out somehow and the teacher had everyone on high alert to look for it and capture it. Several children returned to the teacher having found the scorpion. That was the day we found out our school was infested with scorpions. I had a wax and formaldehyde preserved dry human brain specimen. It was made in about 1890 to 1910 for a medical school. I posted pictures some time ago on our thrift store hauls where I bought it with a human skull. It was clearly a male brain. Maybe because I grew up in the South and around folks hunting. But I don't see why your parents wouldn't let you hang out with him anymore for this. A hunting knife doesn't mean he's trouble. It's understandable that bringing the knife to school is bad and they would most likely be expelled here too, but I am surprised the parents would think a young kid non-violently possessing a hunting knife is a bad kid, because he most likely just thinks it's cool and has no ill intentions. It would be a different story if he had actually done something destructive or hurtful with it. I brought a live scorpion for show and tell. I think it was 3rd grade. The teachers were relatively cool with it until I let it out of its container during class. Took a solid minute to grab some paper towels and brush it back into the mason jar. A few kids were pretty freaked out, but I don't remember getting in much trouble for it. My mom got in trouble for bringing in a piece of an empty beehive she found. She'd stored it in the freezer just to be extra safe, but she thought it would be cool for us kids to bring in for show and tell. The head teacher was pissed though because kids could possibly have bee allergies. It was stored in a plastic box, so kind of unfair that they were mad about it. Not a teacher, but when I was in 3rd grade, this dumb kid in my class decided to bring a live bat to class. The only problem, he put the bat in a plastic bag in his book bag and the bat died because it couldn't breathe. Him removing it from the plastic bag dead, I still remember almost 26 years later. One of my classmates had a deer leg in his locker. This was in middle school, so I don't think it was a show and tell. It apparently wasn't there a while because it started to smell, which was how it was found. This kid wasn't stupid or on an abnormal amount of drugs and went on to a good career in the army. His goals were beyond my understanding. My brother went hunting and then shipped me some venison several states away. In the normal mail, no dry ice, nothing. He said it was frozen when he shipped it and he did overnight it. Carrier wouldn't deliver it to my house BC it was leaking blood. Had to go to the post office. Once I realized I wasn't getting arrested, I nearly pissed myself laughing. He was a full-grown adult. I knew a dude who was a teacher of primary school-aged kids. They had a sink in their classroom that became clogged. I wonder what could be blocking the drain? He said out loud, "Bags of drugs." Blurted out one of the kids. Turns out the girl's dad was a dealer who would hide bags of drugs in the drains under the sinks in their house. When I was in 5th grade and going to school in Oz, this girl in our class brought in a glass jar with a tarantula and a black widow. No clue how she caught both in one day. Or why, within an hour the tarantula was dead and upside down in the jar. Same day there was a fire drill and yep, someone knocked it off her desk and the jar broke, releasing the black widow. We never found it, but the teacher made sure to stomp the dead tarantula just in case. Same thing happened with our glass fire ant farm in 2nd grade. Now that I think about it, I don't know why people kept bringing this shit into school, or why our teachers let them. Had a kid age 6-7 who had a lot going on, but part of it was that he was a compulsive liar with absolutely no sense of when a lie was so poorly constructed that everyone would know. Every single day he would say he had something for show and tell. Most days we didn't have time for his show and tell, but every so often we kind of had to let him have a go. He'd stand up, ready to do his show and tell, then wander over to my desk, browse for a minute, pick up the most random crap. A post-it note, a sharpener, once it was the custom well done stamp that actually had my name on it, and then say some poorly constructed story about how he found it in Africa when he went there for tea yesterday with his auntie or some such. He'd get really upset if he realized nobody believed him, though even at that age, most of the kids had the tact, or gullibility, to just smile and nod. Not a teacher, but I did this one. I brought the switchblade comb, pulled it out and opened it. Teacher panicked and almost passed out and started hyperventilating. I ran into her in my young adult life and she still remembered because it actually put her into labor. This was 3rd grade, about 1987-88. When I was in 6th grade I took a belly dancing bralette thing in that my brother sent me from his deployment. We were studying the Middle East and I had something from there. I thought it was cool. I remember my teacher gulping, eyes bulging, asking, "Just that's all they wear?" And me saying, "Yeah, I guess so." Anyways, it turns out he sent me his girlfriend's present and his girlfriend got my camel book, but I was very popular with the 6th grade boys for a little while. Wow, how did the hospital let them bring home a stillborn baby? In my case, it was so uncomfortable. Didn't want to shame him or make him feel like he'd done something wrong, but also immediately started imagining all the angry emails from parents regarding something that sensitive being shared with 8-year-olds. A teacher once made me the subject of a show and tell. My parents, for reasons understood only by them, thought it'd be a great idea to get raw, still in the husk, black walnuts by the bushel. Taking the husks off resulted in all of us getting our hands dyed a nice, deep walnut brown color. I guess it never occurred to anyone to wear gloves until it was too late. Salad, show the class your hands and tell them all why they look that way. So humiliating to walk around with what looked like dirty hands and black fingernails for a week. If it makes you feel better, I once colored my face orange as an adult. I ran out my usual moisturizer, and found a sachet in a men's magazine. Not porn. Didn't look. Ripped it open, used it, sorted, went to work, got asked why I was orange, no fucking clue. Accidentally used the tanning one, random orange streaks all over my face, looked a clown for a while. A school bag full of his own hair. To be fair, he didn't actually try to show and tell it. He almost brought in an Action Man. I noticed him and his best friend playing with the Action Man. They were putting something on its head. I went over to him and asked them what it was. "It's hair." "Hair? Where did it come from?" "It's Stevie's hair. He got it cut at the weekend." The child had a haircut, brought the clippings home, then put them in his school bag and brought them into school. That hair stayed in his school bag for a full week before his mother noticed. 4th grade, I once got in trouble for bringing 2 bayonets and a pistol, no bullets, to show and tell. One bayonet was from WW1 and a pistol and other bayonet were from WW2. I had okayed them with the teacher beforehand and my parents knew about it, but alas, there was a substitute teacher that day. What 4th grade boy wouldn't think those would be awesome show and tell items? This was the same substitute that requested a parent-teacher conference about how I was influencing his peers by talking about Satanism. My dad politely told her that I was reading The Lord of the Rings at the time. Mid-90s, those weren't spells, they were elven script. He's not drawing violent images, he's drawing Helm's Deep. If you were familiar with English literature, you would encourage him to read Lotter instead of the garbage you have on the preferred reading list, some Goosebumps or Animorph stuff. Not a teacher, but there was a girl in my brother's year whose dad owned a junk salvage place. Girl brings in an old thermometer. Okay, cool, whatever. She then goes, and then this is the most fun part, and proceeds to smash the thermometer on the desk and play with the mercury. How that got resolved, but I do know that by the time I got to first grade, we no longer had show and tell. Not worst, but coolest, a student of mine brought in a taxidermed, stuffed bear from the shoulders up that his dad had killed with a bow. Best part was that his parents didn't know he brought it. He snuck it to school in a huge black garbage bag. A couple of years later he brought homing pigeons that he and his dad are raising and training, and did a whole presentation with the headset mic and everything for the school. The whole family is full of the nicest and coolest people I've ever met. Easily one of my top 3 favorite families of all time. Wasn't show and tell, but once during morning break while I was a student teacher, 2 6-year-olds came to find the class teacher in the staff room. They had something to show her. She came back with pictures. These boys had found half a dead and decomposed hedgehog and decided to pick it up and put it on her desk. Needless to say, hands were thoroughly washed and drenched in sanitizer. My dad had a great show and tell story. He caught a big gardener snake. It was about 3 feet long from his telling, and was telling all his friends at school about it. The teacher told him to stop lying, and he told her he wasn't lying. She then said, "Fine, bring it in." My dad packed up this gardener snake in a big old jar but broke it on the way to school. He walks into class with this big snake in his hands. The teacher freaks out, jumps on her desk, and is terrified of it. She sends him to the principal's office. The principal was also a woman, who wouldn't let him in cause he was holding a big gardener snake. The principal called his mother, who simply responded with, "Why did the teacher want him to bring it?" And then, he ended up getting the day off school and didn't get in any other trouble from it. Not a teacher, but I remember a kid bringing in his hamsters. They were in a cage with tubes. I think there was like 4 in there. He got up and talked about how he liked hamsters and that he's had a bunch of them. He then proceeded to take one out, tell us its name, and out of nowhere he says, "Oh, and check this out." Then he held the hamster above his head for all to see and squished him. Not a teacher and not in a school, but the clinic I'm at had a sort of show and tell with the kiddos that come in, and someone brought some very inappropriate anime magazine that bordered on hentai. He wanted to show everyone his favorite scenes and even brought a notebook full of his own drawings featuring characters that had the likeness of a lot of people on his life. In not a teacher, but as an elementary school kid. Not anymore lol. We were supposed to bring toy animals from home and tell why we picked or liked that animal. Most kids brought stuffed animals or action figures, but this one madland of a girl brought a real-life bearded dragon. She brought it in a plastic bag and just whipped it out and flopped it on the table when it was her turn. The teacher, female and usually very chill, freaked out and called her parents to come get the beast. A few minutes later her dad, Russian, steps into the room, and you could see in his face that he didn't understand what the problem was with the bearded dragon. The teacher freaked out again and talked to him how it could have gone on a rampage and could have bitten someone, and how it's animal cruelty to transport a live animal in a regular one-time use plastic bag. The dad realized that she was super scared and overreacting, so he just said, "Excuse me madam," with a thick Russian accent, took the bag and walked out. The whole time his face didn't show any emotion at all, as if that type of stuff happens to him all day. The girl was the hero of the day, and she somehow didn't get into any trouble because it actually was her dad's idea. BTW im German, so PLS excuse any spelling mistakes, smiles. brought a snake in from recess and it wasn't even S&T. I was banned from recess for a week and not allowed to bring anything living inside the school. It was 4th grade and I had just moved to a new town. Farm boy trying to fit in. It was just a small garter snake but freaked the class out when it hit the floor. I don't quite get why something like that isn't allowed. I get that it's associated with firearms, but on its own it's inert and harmless. Most bullets aren't even sharp. It's more dangerous for a kid to have a rock. With the current state of Apex. Titanfall 3 please. I do feel the series will go the way of current COD games and all get integrated together in some way, so Apex can continue being the cash cow it is. But man. Titanfall multiplayer, even with its low player base, is still a absolute blast to play. Campaign was really fun also.